get started. My name is Andrea Fibilaron, and I am a college program coordinator at California Youth Advocacy Network. And today I have with me two of our student leaders with Campuses Organized and United for Good Health, or COS. Um, Feel free to unmute yourself. I have Brandon Harden.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brandon. I use the he series pronouns. I'm a second year at UC Berkeley studying political science and legal studies. This is my fourth year with COF.
And then we have Rena Mahmood, who's also a COF student leader.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rena Mamoon, and I use the she, her pronouns. And I am a fifth year undergraduate at Cal State University, Fullerton. And my major is public health and minor in public administration.
Thank you both. And we are very excited to welcome you all to our breakout session continuing the conversation about tobacco issues on campus during the pandemic. And as many of you may have experienced, attention on smoking tobacco-free policy and tobacco issues has been divided with the pandemic and concerns about COVID and dealing with campus closures and distance learning. So we wanted this session to really focus on how to keep tobacco on the forefront and why focusing on implementation and compliance of smoking tobacco-free policies are important, even with change in operations. And hopefully we'll be able to provide you with strategies to prepare you for when campuses do fully reopen. So an overview of today's session, we'll go a little bit over into CYN and then go a little bit deeper into who COF is and who our student leaders are and what they do. Then we'll talk about how to engage students during the pandemic and resources that CYN could provide you all with to help support that. And then our COF student leaders will talk about the impact that COVID has had on their implementation and compliance efforts. And then we will have time for a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, or you can go ahead and say that at the end, and we'll have time where you can unmute yourself and ask us directly. So a little bit about CYN. We work with youth in increasing and strengthening youth engagement in tobacco control work. Our college program works with young adults and campuses throughout the state to advocate for smoking tobacco-free college and university campuses. And we also like to stay up to date with emerging products so we can educate young people, adult partners, and communities and support quit attempts about, support quit attempts. So today we'll be talking a little bit more about what the work that we do with young adults and campuses and what our partnership with student leaders are throughout the state. And that is with Campuses Organized and United for Good Health. So that's COF for short. And it is a statewide student-led coalition of undergrad and graduate students. We are lucky enough to have 16 students working with us during this pandemic, and with representation from UCs, CSUs, private and community colleges. And we work very closely with them on specific projects throughout the year on statewide college and university tobacco-free efforts. And they're really committed to promoting, establishing, and sustaining safer, healthier, and healthy communities throughout the state. And that's through promoting tobacco-free policy adoption, implementation, and compliance. There are huge advocates for effective and accessible tobacco treatment services, educating campus communities about comprehensive tobacco issues, and they're very on top of responding to the evolving threat of new and emerging products in their communities. So when it comes to student engagement during the pandemic, we've all had some challenges with virtual learning and the Zoom fatigue that has come with that. And we might have limited in-person resources, both with people not being on campus and also with some adult partners working at home. So CYN does have some resources to help support that work. So we have a CCSA training, which is an online training for students who are interested in becoming cessation advocates. We also have social media posts to help with utilizing social media for messaging on education and supporting and encouraging young people quitting. And we also still provide support with statewide days of action, which we have upcoming on April 22nd for Earth Day. So a little bit more about our cough cessation student advocates training. Like I mentioned, this is designed specifically for students who are interested in becoming cessation advocates. So this provides them with information on how they can improve their campus cessation services and help them be better, provide that peer support for fellow students in quitting. The cool thing about this training is it is self-paced. So students are more than welcome to take it whenever they have time. We do have 6 sessions, which take about 30 minutes each. Some topics include prevalence data and tobacco use behaviors for young adults, more information on emerging products, motivational interviewing, and brief intervention techniques as well. And so with social media, I'm sure a lot of you can relate. We've kind of turned to social media for education. We know that this is a quick way to engage young people and our followers. So you want to make sure that your posts are have content that will grab the audience's attention and have concise messaging. Messages for education can include highlighting the risks of vaping and tobacco use, identifying addiction awareness. We know we've heard from folks throughout the state that they don't young people don't associate themselves with addiction. They think that it's more for older people who smoke. So really highlighting symptoms that they can relate to, like anxiety, headaches, trouble concentrating in classes. You can also make that connection between tobacco use and severe COVID-19 symptoms, and also kind of bringing about that concern about how secondhand smoke can play into the spread of COVID, despite people's use, whether they're users or non-users. And you can also utilize social media for virtual Q&A. So our partners at Sacramento State actually had a Vexed About Vaping Q&A where on Instagram, where they had their peer health educators answer any questions about vaping and tobacco use. And they also had some frequently asked questions on hand in case people weren't submitting anything. So this is just a really great way to get your student ambassadors or peer health educators involved in social media as well. Like I mentioned earlier, CYN does provide social media posts available on our CYN online website. And what we do is we provide quit tips and reasons for quitting. And this is specifically for youth and young adults. And we receive feedback from young people across the state, not only on images, but also on messaging, so that it can really appeal to the audience that we're trying to reach out to. We also provide customized resources at CYN. So if you would like to provide maybe a local number or a local resource on campus or in the community, that's something that we can provide for you all as well. My apologies. And I think it's also very important when if you want to use social media for advocacy and advocating for implementation and compliance, to really reframe kind of what that looks like on social media. So really, stressing that while the pandemic may have changed operations, we can still have these conversations about implementation and compliance because of the pandemic. Now more than ever, people are really focusing on their health and their well-being. And so smoke and tobacco-free policies really show a campus's commitment for protecting the health of students and staff. And as I mentioned earlier, secondhand smoke affects more than just the tobacco user. So regardless of who is using tobacco and who's not using tobacco, individuals' health can be compromised through tobacco use and secondhand smoke. And we have an upcoming event on April 22nd, which is Earth Day. And while, in-person tabling may, kind of be on the back burner because of campus closures, we can still provide you with support. And this is still an opportunity to educate young people about tobacco's negative impact on the environment, especially with the rising concern of disposal of vapes and e-cigarettes and how they are e-waste. So you can still hold virtual events. CYN will still provide free resources. You can still make a call to action for young folks to quit, link them to local resources, and even get involved with the community as well, through food distributions, or maybe link with people who are on campus. So if there are departments that are actually operating on campus, you can link with them as well to support students who are actually learning in person. So very quickly, we still provide quit kits for those who are interested in receiving quit kits. And you can tailor these quit kits to your campus community. We don't have any buttons on our website to order quit kits. So you can, if you'd like quit kits throughout the year, feel free to email me and I'll, it's on the slide, but I'll put it in the chat box after our presentation as well. And so an additional resource that we wanted to create for young people who may not have access to the campus resources, or maybe they don't want a quit kit delivered to their house by their campus, we created a digital quit kit for young people with free or low cost resources or items that can be found around the house. And this quit kit has information about mapping out their plan to quit so they can be successful in those attempts, and how they can identifying and managing triggers or cravings throughout their quit journey, and then also some journal prompts and DIY recipes like flavored water to help curb the need to have flavors. And this is also available on our Quit Tobacco website at CYN. So next, I'd like to hand it off to our COF student leaders, Brandon and Rena, to talk about the impact that COVID has had on their implementation and compliance efforts.
Good morning, everyone, again. Brandon here. Real quick before we get into the meat of what I want to talk about, I want to share some perspectives that I bring to the table on working with tobacco prevention and compliance during the pandemic. So I'm an RA here on campus at UC Berkeley, and I've stayed here on campus throughout the entirety of the pandemic so far. So when most folks went home in March and April, I stayed in the dorms through the summer, and I've still stayed in the dorms until now. So as an RA, I'm in a direct kind of positioned to see a lot of what happens in the dorms and be in an enforcement capacity to enforce our smoke-free policies on campus. Next slide. I also wanted to talk about some demographics of UC Berkeley specifically that makes compliance with tobacco rules and regulations and our smoke-free policy more difficult and allows for more folks to be caught in the cycle of addiction. We have one of the biggest disparities in wealth on campus. So we are ranked one of the highest for having the most wealthy students, and we also have a very significant poor group of students that come from demographics that use different products. For example, where I'm from a really low income community. Most of the folks that come from where I'm at smoke cigarettes or chew. And what we're noticing more is especially the folks that are now here on campus, they are moving towards smoking cigarettes increasingly. That's what's happening here on my campus. And I'm sure Rena can share some more perspectives when she comes up to speak. But that's something particularly interesting that we're seeing, this kind of demographic difference between what the products are being used. Most of the wealthier students I've been noticing use the electronic cigarettes, your Juul, and some of the newer products that are coming in and out of the market, the puff bars, and those products. We are seeing a bigger shift in the dorms here to cigarettes. And we've been seeing a number of instances of students in groups smoking cigarettes in and around campus and getting in trouble for that. So it's an interesting issue that we are now dealing with that we previously weren't dealing with as much here on campus. Next slide. Pre-pandemic, I was working on tobacco projects here on campus, partnering with CYAN as well as Truth Initiative. And what I've noticed here on our kind of campus is with our demographics, not liking tobacco, being an anti-tobacco advocate isn't something that's very cool. We don't have many groups on campus that are dedicated to those kinds of issues. Many students don't want to talk about those issues. So what winds up happening on campuses like mine is most of the projects are individual based. And that's what I found myself doing, is working individually with administrators to try to make projects happen. I did a project over the course of the last year with Truth Initiative, trying to get a mandatory tobacco training module implemented at our school. And I started this project before the pandemic started and tried to finish it during the pandemic. And I noticed a massive shift. I think there's an important learning, a number of different learning things I've taken away from working with administration pre and during pandemic. In that pre-pandemic, the administrators were much more willing to talk about tobacco regardless of the context, just knowing that it is an addictive product that consumes a lot of the lives of students on our campus. Now things are a bit different. I'll talk about in the next slide how things are a bit different. Pre-pandemic, we did have ubiquitous signage about, you see here on my slide, that's a picture from our campus when we had our smoke-free signage up much more ubiquitously. Now, most of those signs are changed, are now signs to wear masks. So now there's less signage and less prevalence of the rule that you cannot smoke on campus. So increasingly what I'm seeing on campus is folks doing just that, smoking cigarettes or vaping, because the signage is being changed out with the different priority that is happening. In terms of compliance more generally, pre-pandemic administrators, both in the dorms and on and around campus, were quite on it. If somebody was smoking, they would quickly be asked to stop. If they're in the dorms, they would go through a rapid conduct process. Now, most of the focus is on COVID compliance things. So now we're not really enforcing the rules as much on tobacco use. Go to the next slide. I wanted to share an additional perspective from a different student. This comes from a student in 2019 who wrote in the Berkeley Economic Review: as I walked to my next class, I often noticed a small plume of smoke rise above a stranger walking in front of me. Not their breath, because it's not generally that cold. If I were in India, I would have guessed it was from a cigarette. But here in the US, I know this experience is the vapor from a Juul. So it's not just the students that are engaged in tobacco control. This particular student, actually, I'm friends with and has no tobacco control experience, but understands the addictive nature of juuling, how ubiquitous it is on campus. Next slide, please. During the pandemic, things have completely changed. The project that I was working on with Truth kind of came to a complete halt. Administrators were completely overwhelmed with trying to transition to online learning, to dealing with the compliance issues with COVID and the rules that came in place with that. So that immediately became something that I noticed to struggle with. But what I realized is during this process that there is a reframing that can happen on tobacco. Instead of just talking about tobacco as an addictive product, we can also talk about tobacco as a social justice issue. When you learn about the history of the exploitation of tobacco companies, how they've exploited underrepresented groups, particularly, that message sticks increasingly, more than just addiction. So I found in a campus like ours that is highly diverse. It has about 25% of students that come from underrepresented minorities in by UC Berkeley standards. 25% of our students are underrepresented minorities. That becomes a much bigger issue, knowing that these companies are active, have historically and actively target these groups of students. That can become a much more appealing message to administrators to take action on those issues. With the tobacco training module, we had to completely adjust the approach and the end goal with the project. I think that's something that I've had to learn the most about, and I think is the biggest takeaway is flexibility with administrators right now, in that they're not really looking to do major permanent projects. Temporary things are getting your foot in the door, getting as much of those small pieces of projects completed, more folks aware of the issues, is the best that sometimes we can do right now, so that when things get better, there's already those connections in place that I can hopefully go back to in order to continue with my project or work on other projects with administrators. Like I said before, I've noticed a significant change in the types of products students are using. I've noticed increasingly, both on campus and also in the fraternity and sorority system, a move towards cigarettes, mostly flavored types of cigarettes, cigarillos, and occasionally cigars, mostly in the fraternity system. But we're seeing kind of a phasing out of the Juul products and the puff bars in favor of a different, often flavored, or in some cases unflavored cigarettes products. Like I said, when we reframe addiction as not just being addiction and damaging to our students, but also the fact that the reason they were addicted in the first place is because these companies targeted them directly because of their identities, that is really striking to students. And it's something that I found actually helps get more students involved. Next slide, please. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Rena to talk a little bit about her campus.
Thank you, Brandon. So I am from Cal State University Fullerton. And before the pandemic started, this is something that we have, sorry, give me a moment. Okay. This is something that we have done before the pandemic in order to get involved and to advocate for our smoke free policy. So at Cal State Fullerton, we created an advocacy group and it was made up of students. And we listed our advocacy group as an organization on campus. And in order to get um, an organization on campus, it benefits you greatly because you get members' privileges and you're able to hold events and RSVP areas on campus and you're able to receive funding. So to move forward, the organization that we had on our campus, we were considered the Fresh Air Advocates, and we advocated for the signage on campus. And in order to advocate for the signage on campus, we make sure that the signage is updated with a more updated sign and design in order to catch the eye, and we make sure that our signage is not damaged. Another thing as well that we did is that we advocated for the executive order associated with our campus, and with our campus, it was considered Executive Order 1108. So Executive Order 1108 was a smoke-free policy that was initiated at all Cal State universities. Now, this is an executive order that is currently at all Cal State universities, and if you are at a university itself, you can do your own Google research and find what smoke-free policy is listed within your campus in your specific area. As an organization, we created events on campus, such as cleanup events, and one main event that we had on campus was our cigarette butt cleanup. So the cigarette butt cleanup started back in 2013 when a professor, he was focused on tobacco research. So he took a group of his students from his class and they went on campus, and in 30 minutes, they collected about 5,000 cigarettes. And that was a huge shock. So he brought that up to the chancellor's office, and it was like discussed within multiple public health courses. So a group of students decided to create the organization, the Fresh Air Advocates, and they started to make their semester event called the Cigarette Butt Cleanup. Now, the Cigarette Butt Cleanup was a really eye opener. Now, you don't have to do it specifically like a cigarette butt cleanup on your campus. You can do it with trash. You can do it during Earth Day. You can do it something that's associated with the month that you're in. It's all up to your own creativity. But the point of the cigarette butt cleanup was it helped students and faculty see how much cigarettes we picked up throughout the year. And we saw that because of our organization, has it been benefiting other students and faculty who are smoking on campus? Has our approach and our advocacy towards the smoke-free policy made a difference throughout the years? And as we continuously picked up cigarettes on campus, we noticed that the amount that we picked up was smaller and smaller and smaller. So we saw that our organization that was made up of students who advocated about the policy was making a difference. Now, the greatest importance about signage is that you can have a signpost on a building, but it's not going to do much difference for those who are smoking. They're going to ignore it and keep going. Why? Because there's not much that we can do when it comes to using authority and force. And that is something that we definitely want to stay away from. Because when we want to advocate for a policy, we want to do it in a more positive manner. So that means using any sense of motivational training and verbal judo. So our organization, since it was made up of students, we were trained from the police department on our campus how to use verbal judo. Now, verbal judo is a script that you would use in order to de-escalate any situation. In other matters, it's a script that you would use to use it in a more positive atmosphere. So when we would train our students, we would have them approach other students or faculty who are smoking, let them know about the policy and ask them kindly if they could put it out or smoke off campus. And then we go ahead and we take observational data. So it's a lot of things involved, but it really gets your students involved. And you can also take the data that you take within each semester from your cleanups, from approaching students and faculty who are smoking, from holding research, and you can take all that information and data and present it to your campus. You can present it to your health center on campus. You can present it to different departments, and then you can have different departments funding for your organization. You can have different faculty and staff and the chancellor itself supporting your organization. And that was pre-pandemic. So this is just an overview of how to start when we do go back to campus and where to begin. So right now, after the pandemic, it's so important to be active on social media. So you can still create your student organization, but create it on social media. Recruit students that are from freshmen all the way to seniors. Recruit students that are from different campuses. And the whole point of this is to make sure that you are showing faculty and your school itself that you are getting involved, and you're also hosting virtual events. For example, you can do a safe community cleanup like around your neighborhood, or you can do a virtual fitness class and do a walk in the park, or go do some stairs in the park and teach students that the mission is to have healthy lungs and protect our environment and to have clean air. So associate all of your activities on social media right now is such a huge importance to be active as an organization. We can go ahead and move forward. Thank you. So this is a flyer that we have created. It was our cigarette butt cleanup. And this is on the bottom right corner. This was the group of students who was part of the organization. And we would always reserve space on campus. Since we were an organization, we were able to reserve the space on campus and also receive funding from a different department to have food and to have giveaways. So volunteers were able to join, and volunteers came from like all over. We had volunteers even from the American Lung Association, and they came all the way from Los Angeles. So on the top right corner is a picture of all the cigarettes that we collected. And the reason we labeled the Ziploc bags is for data. So we collected cigarettes from like different locations, such as the library, such as the engineering building, and we counted the number of cigarettes and saw which one was a leading factor. So it all helped within our data. And if you want to continue your data as a student group and conduct research, I highly suggest it. However, it's not needed. The cleanup itself is amazing overall. So you can go ahead and move forward. On the left side is a picture of our Executive Order 1108. And this says that it's a system-wide smoke and tobacco-free environment. So the policy itself states that the borders within your own campus is smoke-free. That includes the parking structures that are on your campus, the bathrooms, the outside areas. If your car is parked in the parking structure and you're smoking in your car, you are still going against the smoke-free policy. Why? Because it's still considered on campus. So what did our organization do like on campus? So we conducted data collection and observation. When we went on our walks and we approached other students and faculty, we took confidential observational data. So we took down the type of product that they were using, if our verbal judo was in any great effect, which it was, and if our verbal judo helped stop them to stop smoking and they relocated to off campus, which they did. We checked and maintained the signage on campus. So that includes the smoke-free policy signage. So if the signage was very old and it didn't really state what the smoke-free policy was, or if it was damaged, we would make sure we would go out and mark them and have the department who would fix the signage on campus go ahead and put the new ones out. We employed verbal judo techniques to students smoking on campus. We collaborated with team members to plan, organize, and execute the cigarette butt cleanup. So what would help us as an organization was getting the support from different departments. such as the public health department. They're definitely willing to help you do more activities on campus and to help support you wherever you are regarding your activities. And another thing we did, we assisted in maintaining our social media outlets. So, right now, as I have mentioned, social media is a huge factor during the pandemic. And another way you can get support from other departments is by having your advisors or counselors or your faculty from your department send a mass email and saying, hey, can you send this mass email to let students know that they can join our organization? Lung health is such an importance right now. So having students advocating for the mission and the smoke-free policy is going to be a highlight of the whole issue that we are in currently. Um, and I believe that is all. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brandon and Rena. I think I can, as an adult partner, it's always really exciting to just see how passionate and how involved college students and young people are. So I will open up the floor for any questions. I've also included the contact information for myself, Brandon, and Rena, if you'd like to take note and connect with us further after our breakout session. But so I'll leave that up there for a little bit before I stop sharing my screen. So I will open up the floor for any questions in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask us, feel free to do that as well.
While people are coming up with some questions, I had some additional perspectives and ideas that had come up while I was sitting here. One thing that I've done with my residents and my role as a resident assistant is creating events that are events that are created around relieving stress and dealing with stress in proper ways. I've noticed the theme that comes up often when talking with students, specifically when there's a compliance issue, when somebody is out in the courtyard vaping, or they're caught in their room vaping or smoking cigarettes or whatever product that it is they like to use. The common theme is the incredibly high stress, that the baseline stress of going to college, you add on a pandemic, you add on additional competitiveness at a campus, and that creates the perfect environment for folks to try these kind of products as an escape. So reframing these issues, not even in the type of a saying that you might be addicted to these products, but that they are unhealthy coping mechanisms with stress, is much more inviting for students. Students often aren't willing to understand or comprehend that they have an addiction to these products. So inviting them in, knowing that I recognize your stress, I see your stress, I feel your stress, but there are better ways to do this than the products that you're using, is a much more inviting way that I've noticed than to say, you have an addiction, you need to quit. That often turns folks off. So yeah, creating an environment where folks are able to talk about their stress, able to relieve it in healthy ways, yoga, going for runs, which can be difficult in our time, especially when certain rules are shifting on campus, but there are always ways to talk about healthily relieving stress in a healthy and productive manner.
And getting off of what Brandon said, which was amazing, thank you, Brandon, was if you're going to advocate for the smoke-free policy on your campus, or you're just going to advocate for non-smoking environments on our campus, it's really important to understand those who are smoking, where they're coming from. You're not only advocating for a clean air environment or for your smoke-free policy on your campus, you're advocating for those who are smoking as well. So you want to hear their issues and you want to tailor what they're going through for what is better for them on campus. So if they need more stress relief activities, then you should go ahead and advocate for them and make sure that they have the certain activities on their campus in order to relieve their stress. Same thing if they want quit classes or if they want quick kits, you are the person who you're advocating for. So you're definitely not going against them. You're advocating for the student body and for your campus as a whole. So that's something to definitely remember, is to always listen to them.
Thank you both, Rena and Brandon, for that insight. Any questions? Anyone would like to unmute themselves, or anything that they might want to share? Any tips on how to get students involved, maybe in the work, or any maybe if you want to share anything that maybe you're experiencing with your campuses or with your students at this time. And so I will also be putting my contact information in the chat box, but I would also like to put the link for the Cessation Student Advocates training that I briefly mentioned. And this is a training that's great, especially for folks who maybe are new or want to know how to get started, and maybe just want to know a little bit about kind of what does tobacco look like on college campuses, what products are being used, and then also maybe some things that they can do. So like brief intervention before actually referring them to any other resource or maybe to the health center. And so things that students can do. One thing that we've heard from folks across the state in our focus groups is sometimes it's uncomfortable for them to go seek out adults for help. So including students in that compliance and implementation efforts to help support students in quitting can be vital, because sometimes they might feel comfortable speaking with someone that is their own age and maybe has some experience with other students that might make young people more open to the idea of learning more about quitting, even just to have that conversation going.
Hi, Andrea. Can you put the link to the digital quick kit in the chat box?
Yes, I will do that. So the digital quit kit is available on our Quit Tobacco webpage, and that actually has a download. You can download the quit kit, but it also includes information about different resources specifically for youth and young adults that they can use that are free to help support them in quitting. So, we've heard from young people that we have information for the California help smokers helpline, as well as their vaping helpline as well. But we've heard from young people that they might not prefer to call someone on the phone. So we also have information for free texting apps and programs as well. So there's a variety of information that young people can use on that quit page as well.
Thank you. And I actually have another question. Sorry. Have how effective have you got has the digital quick kit been? Only because we don't work with big campuses like community colleges or universities. Um, but we do work with technical and vocational schools. So because they're smaller and more private, how have people been using the digital quick kit? Because we do have quick kits for the students and staff, but this I really like the idea of the digital format, especially in this pandemic. So I want to more insight on that.
Yeah, I don't have information on analytics like as of right now, but when we first launched the Quick Kit, we also we had advertised it to our tobacco control partners and also to our campuses, and we were seeing a lot of click-throughs on our website. So it looked like a lot of people were accessing it. I don't have the information as to kind of what that looks like right now and kind of how people are actually utilizing it. But I think the thing that we really wanted to keep in mind with these digital quick kits is that not only do they include free or low cost resources, but typically, you know, you'll have like a pen or paper, or maybe you might have gum in your house, or these are things that we included a list of resources or activities that people can do every day without having to go an extra mile to buy something or to seek a resource in person. So we really wanted to keep in mind, especially with, you know, a lot of people staying at home during the pandemic, we wanted to make sure that we were providing some solutions for those who may have limited resources or may not feel comfortable going out in a pandemic, seeking additional help from a stranger. So yes, I don't have like specific numbers from you, but we were seeing a lot of click-throughs when we first launched it. And you know, I think this is just a great resource for young people, especially for those who may have moved back home and maybe don't want to have something as obvious as a quick kit in their house. You know, we've heard from young people that they've had to move back home because of the pandemic and because of campus closures, and they might not feel, maybe their parents or their family members don't know about their tobacco use. So this is kind of a way to have something that's a little bit more, I guess, that kind of gives them anonymity and without having to have like a quick kit delivered to them or having it laid out. It's something that they can kind of use everyday items with. So didn't directly answer your question, but I hope I was able to provide you some insight.
Thank you.
And I think we have time for one, maybe two questions, or if there's anything you'd like to ask about CYN resources, or even from our COF student leaders about their experiences on campus, both pre-COVID and during COVID. So our contact information is in the chat box, and we'll also share the slides as well. I just wanted to kind of, I guess, to wrap up the breakout, you know, this is an interesting time, especially with engaging students. And, you know, we've heard from Brandon that some students are on campus and kind of heard about that experience. And then we've heard from Rena how those, that compliance and implementation work has had to change because she's not on campus. And so, yeah, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. At CYN, we're constantly trying to figure out ways to hold virtual events or engage students both virtually, and now that some people are trickling onto campus, how we can also engage those who are on campus. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And so our breakout is over. Am I correct? Yes. So you will have a 5-minute break and then we will reconvene in the general session room and create an action plan for implementation and compliance on colleges and universities. We would love to see you there. We will also have the evaluation link for all of the workshops in our series. So we hope to see you all there, and thank you so much for having us for this breakout session.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Brandon and Rena. That was great. How do you all feel?
Awesome.
I felt good. It went great.
Wish they had some more questions, but it's okay.
Yeah.
We just did so
Yeah,
well.
I know. I noticed. I think even in our opening session, it was a little bit more quiet than usual, right, Christina?
I think it's a Friday. Oh, someone is in the waiting room. I wonder why.
I'm heading out to work. It was nice seeing you all.
Oh yes.
Yep.
I will be in touch if I have any questions. But thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yep. Bye all.
Do you have anywhere to go, Rena?
Not
I saw
really.
you at the beginning of the session. You can take a break if you'd like, and then we'll see you at the closing session.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, I'm gonna